shopping today and I'll go to school tomorrow. First impressions are incredibly important.
Honey, you can make a wonderful first impression.
Brenda, how could you?
He was a jerk, okay?
I've made my choice and I choose me.
North-South Connection podcast fans, welcome back inside West Beverly High for 902 No-So. I am JT, and joining me on this chronological rewatch podcast series of Beverly Hills 90210 is my partner, Tim Capel. Tim, how are you?
JT, doing real good. You know, this podcast lately, it's been fitting like a glove, I feel like. I think we've got another very exciting outing with a brand new guest.
God, we do, and it's tough because it felt, if we just ended on that last one, I probably would have been satisfied.
I know, right?
Because what a peak that was between our guest Rocco, who was amazing, and then the episode itself was incredible. Yeah. For those that may not have listened or debuting here, I went the full 10 out of 10 on that bad boy last episode. So we're flying high coming into episode 8 of Beverly Hills 90210 from season 1.
No doubt, and I absolutely contemplated the 10 myself. I feel like you were kind of talking me up towards it, and I don't know, I feel like I still reserve my right to maybe change it. If anything, I will be bumping that one up, perhaps, as we continue this watch through season 1.
And, we mentioned that we had an amazing guest last episode, and I think we have one that's going to stand up the test of time as well here tonight. He is the co-host of the Viewer's Choice podcast right here on this very feed, and co-host of the brand new WWE War podcast along with me on this very feed, and that is Mr. Marcus Fuller. Marcus, how are you?
Hey guys, I am super happy to be here, and after last episode, I would consider that to be a peak, and after every peak, you need a valley. So I am here to level us off and reset the table.
I'd say it could be more of a plateau than a valley, so we'll see.
There we go. Yeah.
Plateau's okay too, and I should mention also the co-host of the Final Wrestling Place podcast on the soon-to-be-named network, along with the Toolman, not the Toolman, Tim Taylor. In my heart, he's the Toolman because I don't recognize Tim Allen as a person. So
valid.
When I worked with my old media company, and A&E was our client, I saw that fucking biography on Tim Allen so many times. Like, they aired that thing constantly. I had to watch it. So I knew his whole damn life story. The drugs and everything else, and then all the home improvement clips and Santa Claus and everything else. But anyway,
he's not a person. He's just the voice of Buzz Lightyear, but he's not a person.
Yeah, fuck that.
Not for long.
That's true. We are not here to opine on the filmography of Tim Allen, but we are here to talk now that we're on season 1, episode 8. And Marcus, as is the standard before we dive in, we usually ask our guests to just take 60 to 90 seconds and tell us about your relationship with the show. Were you in it from the beginning? Did you find it later? Have you gone back to revisit it? You were a novice? What's your deal?
So pretty much I'm a novice. I grew up having I guess a respect for the show. Like, my first memory of the show is I'm probably 3 years old, and I'm channel surfing at night, and I remember seeing the show, and I asked my mom, what's this show? She tells me it's Beverly Hills 90210, and it's kind of for older kids or older people, and I'm like, well, can I watch it? She's like, yeah, you can watch it. And she summed it up best. She was like, it's like Saved by the Bell for grown-ups. And I was like, oh, okay. So I watched for a week or two, and then eventually fell off because I'm 3 or 4 years old. But the only other run-in with Beverly Hills 90210 that I have, and this is almost like a 90s sitcom theme of itself. My mother, who was single at the time, working very hard to provide a living for me, and she's trying to get me into this preschool that is way out of our price zone. And the preschool's claim to fame was that they recently had 2 guest celebrities come and speak to the kids. The first one was Joey Lawrence, and the second one was Jason Priestley.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, they had them back to back pretty much. And so I was like, oh, Beverly Hills 90210. So that's really the only, I guess, experience I have with the show before jumping back in today.
Jason Priestley, that's a big get. I thought you were going to say Joey Tada or something.
The
James,
school
that
was balling.
counts.
I think the school was balling. I had no business even having an application for that place at the time.
So
Wow.
what is JC Priestley talking to preschool kids about?
I mean, yeah, it's a weird.
I have no idea. Maybe he's talking to the moms more importantly. I have no idea at the time.
Yeah.
Trying to score some digits. All right. Very interesting backstory. Maybe our most unique Not a 2-0 fan yet, given that backstory. So now, have you been watching along with this, or like was tonight's kind of the first one you've watched in a while? Like, how novice are you? It's like, is this the only episode you've seen in a long time?
So I checked out the first episode when you guys started this, and then I haven't seen any other episodes except for the one tonight.
You've been listening to the podcast though.
But I have been listening to the podcast. Yes, absolutely.
So you're up on the current storylines at least.
Yes.
Okay. Tim, before we get started, do you want to tell everyone about our favorite Instagram account?
Yes, our favorite Instagram account is BH90210 Restored, and that is basically a curated collection of scenes from Beverly Hills 90210 with the original music put back in them. So when you're watching this on streaming or even on the DVDs, you're going to get music replaced just like you do with all these old shows from the 90s. And if you're curious what the original songs were, do check out that Instagram site. And they've gone through pretty much the first 4 seasons. I don't know how much progress has been made lately. We should say we're not affiliated with the person who runs this site. It's just a nice little resource for us. So I don't know. I will say in one instance in particular, in this episode, you really do see how some of these song choices can change and influence your interpretation of a scene. So we'll get into that.
Okay. Interesting. And the episode we're talking tonight is The 17-Year Itch. Aired November 29th, 1990, the week after Thanksgiving. As we talked about last episode, was our Thanksgiving special.
Yeah.
It snowed early on Thanksgiving that year in Beverly Hills, though. Covered.
Quite so.
All right, why don't we go ahead and dive in? We get some very elegant piano music opening us up as Cindy is still not loving California, but it's their anniversary, her and Jim. And Jim's pretty cold about her missing home. He's just like, this is our home now. Just accept it. Move on. And we know that Cindy's really been struggling for what we've seen early on here. She's had a hard time adjusting. She misses home, misses her friends. It's kind of been doing her own thing. So Jim wants to get it in for the anniversary. He's like, let's go. I can put the work aside for a quick 20 if you want to hop in. He's got his pajamas on, so you know he means business. But Cindy lays down. She's like, I want to talk first. And then without missing a beat, Jim's like, I got to get back to work and just leaves. So he will not even entertain the 5 minutes of chatter to get it in. So I guess he didn't want it that bad. But so he's like, I got to get an hour work in. I'm going down to the kitchen to work on work stuff. So this is quite the start, Tim. It was really, if you've been following along, you knew this frostiness was building. But this like really hammered it home right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's true. It's a nice little follow-up on some tensions we've seen between these two in these just first few episodes. I think it's a pretty bad look for Jim to be willing to put the work aside to get some in. But as soon as she's like, can we talk a little bit first? Just, I don't know, maybe humor me here. He's like, I got to put in another hour of work. Sorry. Like, it's so blatant. He doesn't even, you can't get away with that.
How many minutes of talking? It's like he does none.
Yeah.
He just had no interest in it at all.
None. Just wanted to get right down to business. She's like, you got to butter me up a little bit first.
Would you think that opener, Marcus?
Not a good look for Jim at all, man.
Yeah, tough start.
He had his working pajamas on. He was ready to put that work in. And he couldn't even get a 5-minute feeling out process. So yeah, not a good look for Jim. I feel pretty bad for Cindy here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was their 17th anniversary, obviously, based on the name of the episode. So by this point, he's checking out. All right, so Brenda's kind of picking up on these vibes right away. She's feeling something's going on, and Brandon's he's kind of out to lunch on it. He's like, nah, they're married. They're supposed to be crabby. They're supposed to have issues. So they're not really on the same page right now. Brenda's a little worried. Brandon's kind of hand waving it all. We then hear some big news, Tim, because we've been tracking this.
Mm-hmm.
But our buddy DJ Mike MC announces he is leaving the school radio station, and we're gonna have an open casting call. And David is all fired up. he's all in on it, and Scott kind of backs him up. And then Steve walks over and he says he's going for it too. So David gets a little nervous because obviously Steve's super popular, and David may not stand a chance against him in this open casting call. But were you sad with the departure of DJ Mike MC? I feel like we didn't get a lot of time with him.
Yeah, I was a little sad. DJ Mike MC, we hardly knew you. But at least they did actually. We don't get a reason for it, but at least we do have him being written out of the show. I'm not sure what he said in his little monologue, but it was making it very clear that he's out and somebody, presumably either David or Steve, is in, or Donna, as we're going to see later. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of do enjoy that we get a little bit. This is going to end up being like our C plot of the episode, which
Correct.
Not all of our episodes even have a C plot at this point.
It may be a D plot and we skip C.
It could be. Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it only gets like 3 scenes, but I do like that we get some more interaction between David and Steve, which I feel like we've been hurting for a little bit here lately.
Yeah, we've been lacking that for sure. And I must say, I'm sure they had this plan for these characters to be involved in. And I kind of like the long-term booking here. Like,
true.
We met DJ Mike MC in the first episode, and it was established. Like, they could have just never had the DJ, and just all of a sudden, when they were ready to do this story, say, "Oh, we have a school radio station. I'm going to try out." Like, I kind of like that they laid the groundwork for 7 episodes of this existing as a thing in the school.
Yeah. Clearly, it's set up as a springboard for something. And Steve and David had that great chemistry right from the bat, right from the jump in the pilot. And again, we haven't seen much of it since then, which has been kind of a shame. We don't get a lot of it here, but I don't know. Any little bit of Steve and David, I'll take it, even if it's in a C/D plot.
Do you think Dave had a shot, Marcus?
He seems a little too young for the spot. Maybe he needs to sit and learn a little bit more before he can get that opportunity to shine. I did make a note though. I thought their chemistry was off the charts. Like coming into this pretty blind, like immediately it jumped off the screen. Like these two just had tremendous chemistry. But the other thing I noticed when I saw Steve compared to David was like, who let this 25-year-old man into this high school? Because I know when you're teenagers, sometimes 2 or 3 years can make a huge difference. But David looks like a child compared to some of the other teenagers on the show.
David definitely skews the curve, as we learned a few episodes ago, Tim. But he skews that because he's like the youngest and he looks the youngest. So
yeah, and
he definitely stands out, him and Scott, in that regard.
I was gonna
than everyone else.
It's definitely enhanced by the fact that like 90% of his scenes are with Scott, who is like just as young, or Hat Kid, as Rocco referred to him as in the last episode. But just the two of them obviously stand out, and you've got Steve with his "hello, fellow kids" moment. But I don't know, it makes for a fun contrast.
All right, so Miss Rye, our teacher, comes in and she wants Brandon to do a twins study. They're a little lukewarm on that idea, but she convinces them to go ahead and to do it. So they agree, and they will be a part of the study to study twins. We get Cindy, who's still on her gardening kick, and she's shopping with Anna. And I guess we get revealed later that I don't know when this became a thing, but apparently Cindy's now like a landscaper or something. Like,
yeah.
I thought she was still just landscaping her own house, because it wasn't Anna isn't she the same person that they mixed up and came to the wrong house or whatever? And
the housekeeper who she was reluctant to take on, in that one episode, who we haven't seen since then, I don't believe. So
now she works for Cindy and they landscape gardens. Like, I don't know. Like, you thought they would have dropped this in at some point that she picked up this gig. But anyway, so she's gardening. She's shopping at the garden center. And some creepy guy is just randomly snapping Polaroids of her from afar. And it turns out to be her friend Glenn that she knew from way back in the day. He was a photographer. Glenn, I had his full name somewhere here. Hang on. Glen Evans.
Oh.
When I first wrote it down, it was Glen Avid. I put it was Glen Evans. I went up and looked it up. So him and Cindy go way back. He even knew Jim, so they're back from Minnesota, the Midwest. Glenn said, so now I thought it was creepy at first, and then I'm like, well, he knew her, so maybe he's just like, playing flirty, coy, taking her picture, and then it's like, hey, it's me. But then it's even creepier because he says, I didn't know it was you when I was taking your picture. Like, so that, he tries to play it off like they hired him. I guess the garden center hired him to take pictures, but I don't know. It was a creepy thing to say. Like, I just thought you were some random stranger I was taking your picture, not my old friend. But anyway, so we have this meet cute with Cindy and Glenn. Marcus, what do you think of Glenn coming back into Cindy's life here initially?
Yeah, what a creep. Like, you got to have a better cover story than that if you're going to be snapping photos out in public like that. And going back real quick to the scene where the Walsh twins got approached about the twin research. For Brenda being so intuitive, how did she not pick up that this teacher was ready to pounce on her brother in the hallway? It was the attraction there was inappropriate at best, and she's just not gonna say anything. But I understand that's not the the point of the episode. But yeah, that teacher was having her way with Brandon just with her eyes. Like, that was wildly inappropriate.
I feel like it's contractually, and Jason May, and this is what he was talking to the preschool about, I feel like it's contractually obligated to have at least one older woman come on to him per episode. So this was filling that gap that Miss Rye had to come in and put the moves on him.
She's the same one from the newspaper, the journalism class, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure 100%, but because I didn't remember the name Miss Rye, so
I didn't either.
I guess. Yeah.
I think it's still her, which, I mean, we remarked on their sexual tension previously, and
right.
I don't know. It's
I thought it was Miss Ryan, so maybe it was Miss Ryan, and I thought it was Miss Rye. I'm gonna take her off the debuts list here.
Okay.
I think it is.
That would be, that would be odd to have a Miss Rye and a Miss Ryan. So
correct.
Could it be the same actress playing two different characters?
Well, we'll see that in a minute, but yes, okay. Possibly. Possibly was. All right, so they meet at the garden center. And I'm sorry, Tim, did you have anything to say on that one scene?
Not really, other than Glenn sort of looks like an age-progressed Bill Hader. And it was very distracting to me in all of his scenes.
Yeah. Do you expect Seth Rogen to come in next to him with like a police officer?
Could be, yeah, at any moment. They're going to run a train on Cindy.
We go to Casa Walsh, and Glenn is holding court with the whole Walsh family. They're all sitting in the living room. He reveals he dated Cindy and that he made a mistake of letting Cindy meet Jim. So they kind of went on a few dates. They dated for a month. On his first anniversary, introduced her to Jim, and that was it. She ended up ditching Glenn and going out with old Daddy Jim. So Jim bails out to go to work. He's like, basically, I've had enough of Glenn's stories. But he kind of repeats the mistake that Glenn made 17 years ago, or however long ago that they met, 20 years ago. He leaves Glenn alone with his wife and just heads upstairs.
Yeah. And
lets them chat it up. So, and they do. They're talking late into the morning, and Jim wakes up in the middle of the night. Realizes he's alone in bed. He goes down, and Cindy and Glenn are kind of canoodling a little bit and still talking. And the next morning we find out, because Brenda says it, that it was 3 a.m. when they were still talking. So Cindy and Glenn on the couch till 3 a.m. Brandon wants nothing to do with it. He's like, it's bullshit. They're just friends. They were just talking. Everything's fine. So did you think Glenn was already putting the moves in here, Tim, or do you think he was still? Do you think it was hitting him at this point?
Yeah, I think he's laying down the moves for sure, especially when he saw how well it went over with him and the whole family. What a big hit he was, which I'm sorry, I found that scene very unbelievable where they're all just sitting around like fascinated by his stories of Tiananmen Square or whatever. Like, okay, yeah, these 17-year-olds are super into this, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I guess you could maybe believe Brandon would be, but
maybe.
yeah. He's like, wow, so Tiananmen Square must have been so intense. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
for him to like be holding court for hours or however this is presented is a bit much.
When I was 17, I was like, get out of the way. WCW Saturday Night's coming up.
Exactly. That's what he should have been, a photographer. But yeah, I think he's like, I don't know, maybe I'm onto something here. It started out as just a perhaps overly convenient reunion at the florist while Cindy is doing her landscaping. But now I'm thinking of old times. Cindy seems to be into it. Her husband seems super indifferent. Right. Maybe I can work with this here.
How would you feel, Marcus, if you came down and Glenn was with your other significant other at 3 a.m. on the couch?
I wouldn't be standing on the staircase, like Jerry Lawler hiding in a closet. That's for sure. Just watching. I thought that was weird. Jim's just watching them canoodle. I thought the positioning of everybody during that scene was really good when they're all around the fireplace. Mm-hmm. Because everybody's looking at Glenn, like even the kids, no one's paying Jim any attention. And even like Jim's kind of feeding into Glenn a little bit before he takes off. And then when he does go, excuse himself for an hour or so to go work, like he gives his wife like the coldest, embrace and walks out. So like, if you're Glenn, like, I mean, that's a hanging slider across the plate. Right, like right. You got to knock that out of the park.
He walked into a perfect situation for what he really did. For sure. Jim's really burnt out by work and just checked out across the board right now.
And this lady's cool with you taking her picture in public. Everything's going well here for Glenn.
And you never know when Anna might be in the mix too. So a little twofer. All right. So so then the next morning, Brandon and Brenda are going to the twin study. We get these super creepy twins. Which, Tim, this is continuing our story that continuing our trope we've had for a few episodes now of like the comic relief storyline. Mm-hmm. And while Brenda and Brandon in this episode aren't full comic relief, half of their stuff is. So like we continue to have a very lighthearted storyline to go with some of the heavier stuff, which is continuing to be a trend for us. So here, this is it in this one. So we get these like straight out of the fucking Double Mint commercial. Like they're wearing the same button down, the same creepy smile and comb over, and they like talk alike and dress alike. They got odd smiles, and yeah, it's just very, very creepy when they walk up. It's like this was like the standard tropey TV creepy twins pairing right here.
It really is. I thought this whole twin study subplot was so dumb. Even as you put it, the comedy relief side stories go, this one was just super stupid. There's no point to it. It's also doing that very 90s thing of twins, they must be magic and have psychic power. Like, why was that such a thing in the 90s? I don't know. Marcus, can you help us out here?
Yeah, I don't want to tip my pitch too much here, but I have the same thing. Like this whole scene was just very 90s, like the fascination with twins and them like being able to finish each other's sentences and all that stuff. Just it was a 90s fascination at the time.
It was like, did we just suddenly discover twins in the 90s? Like, what? Why is this so fascinating as a phenomenon?
And then you had the Olsen twins, where you didn't even know they were twins.
Yeah,
they existed behind the scenes in the shadows. So we have Glenn taking Cindy through LA in his convertible. He says he wants to show her the real LA. So maybe she'll feel a little bit better about living there. She can see there's actually some vibrancy, some life, some art. And he drives through, and she's all horned up in the convertible. They're flying through. She's like, her ovaries are banging. And she basically serves it up. Like, Glenn says, Cindy and Jim, you guys like opposites. And he makes his move, and he's like, what they say about opposites? They attract, and they get all close to each other. And Cindy's definitely like feeding some lines here that I could see why Glenn thought he had a shot at this, because she was not shying away from putting feelers out there of potential interest of something, like with the way she was flirting with him, Marcus.
Yeah, she does nothing to like excuse herself from the situation at all. Like she is trying to get caught up in an entanglement, as the kids would say these days.
Love that term. Yes, or perhaps a situationship. Yeah, Cindy's definitely feeding into it. This is where I think the episode takes a pretty like melodramatic turn. And I think this episode, more so than any we've watched so far, is the most melodramatic because it's doing this like torrid, star-crossed lovers romantic plot, but it's presenting it in this still very episodic structure. This is what you would expect to see like a multi-episode arc sort of cover.
Right.
And it just doesn't do that. It just crams it all into this one episode. So it's like very
you could say like the seedlings of this have been planted for like 7 episodes, really.
Sure. Yeah.
But to your point, yes, Glenn it normally might have been
Glenn as a character, yeah, you would expect to be sort of a multi-episode love interest sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think in the future I think the difference right now is we're not getting standalone stories to the other characters, right? So like we get one main story, we may get it like you said a B or C maybe, but the A dominates. Like we're not doing multiple things at once. I think in future years it might have been a situation where this did play out over multiple episodes because so much was going on otherwise. But like right now it's still like Walsh story of the week and the other characters are just kind of there.
Yep. If anything, it's kind of impressive that we've gotten 2 pretty Cindy heavy episodes in a row.
Yeah.
When you don't think of this show as being very centered on the Walsh elders.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think season 1 was still very much about them, about the family. So you were going to get stuff like this more so than like the other kids. Because to your point, even that last episode was very, even though it was really about Jackie and Kelly, it was very Cindy heavy too. Like she was the other main person in this story. So.
Yep.
All right, we head back to the twin study, and in comes Mrs. Stratmore, who, you mentioned earlier, Marcus, someone playing multiple roles. I had forgot about this because I kind of was like floored. The future Mrs. Teasley, who we'll see in episodes to come, the principal of West Beverly High, plays Mrs. Stratmore here. So, Tim, did you remember this, that she was this other character?
I did not remember that she played a dual role in this series, but that's a very Aaron Spelling production sort of thing to do. They typically do it across series rather than within the same show. But, I've been wondering, like, we haven't seen Miss Teasley here. I wonder when she comes in as, the principal everyone remembers from West Beverly. And it's like, oh, well, we're kind of halfway there with the actress at least. So I don't know. Is she going to stick around? Are they going to take a break and just hope that people forgot she played this other character?
I had to look it up. I was so surprised by it. I'm like, is this really her? Like, it just took me a minute to calibrate. I'm like, it's got to be her. And then I confirmed. It's like, it did seem weird because she is such a main character. It's not like she comes back and just plays like another throwaway role. Like, Mrs. Teasley's on like a decent amount going forward.
She's a long-time supporting character, as Miss Teasley.
Odd stuff. All right, so she comes in and we get the twin study. It's again off to a tough start. Brenda and Brandon fail all the tests. The Creeper twins nail it as creepily as possible. Literally finishing each other's sentences. So I thought, again, I think to your point, Tim, this thing's feeling a little awkward and forced storyline. But I think it's we're just killing time with some comedy and the creepy 90s twins at it again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so Glenn is going in all hard. He basically directly asked Cindy, like, do you ever wonder, what if you didn't meet Jim? And Cindy's like, all right, like I know we've come far, but I don't know if I want to go that far. And then Glenn invites Cindy to his opening that he has coming up, his art opening. And she says, we would love to. And Glenn looks like he wants to fucking murder anyone around him at that point. He's like, fuck. He was hoping, thinks, Cindy would just give the okay and come alone. So we leave them here. Nothing happens further, but Glenn really goes in twice. Just basically says, do you ever think what happened if it was us and not you and Jim? And come to my opening. And Cindy dodges one and throws the Heisman up on the other. So Marcus, what do you think of Cindy's dexterity here?
Like Glenn almost fumbled the bag here twice. Like he way overplays his hand, but thankfully, like for him, Cindy is like wants to advance, just maybe not as aggressively as Glenn at this point. And Glenn's got to realize, she's a different woman. She's not the girl that he once knew. She's got kids now, and some responsibilities. So he's going to take a little bit slower than this. But thankfully for him, Cindy is willing to play the long game.
He is definitely overplaying his hand for sure. The way he's constantly needling her about her family and talking about her marriage and her kids and how great it all is, just like, I don't know, almost at the same time trying to insinuate himself into her life, like, oh, you've got such a wonderful life. Wouldn't it be so much better if I was part of it, type of thing. It's like kind of, I almost said reverse negging, but then I remembered that negging wasn't really a thing until, like, I don't know, more recent years. And this is kind of how people used to play it, I guess.
It's almost like he's going through his own shit in front of her. Like, I think he's processing these thoughts as well. Like, fuck, like this could have been me kind of thing. And it's like playing out in real time. And he like has no filter because he feels comfortable with her, right? So he's almost coming to these realizations as he's putting it on her too. Right.
And I get the sense that maybe she doesn't entirely trust herself around him, so she wants some cover. That's why she's like, "Oh, we'd love to be there." So me, Jim, the kids, everybody and their brother, like
Kelly, Donna, they're all gonna come. They're all gonna come. But man, Glenn's face when she says "we" is great. That guy, whoever the actor was, so that was the highlight of this episode.
Bill Hader, yeah.
You just that smile to that like fucking menacing, flat-mouthed look. All right, so we go back to the bedroom where Jim, they're talking about the opening and all this, and Cindy's kind of gushing, talking about Glenn as one would do, just talking nonstop. Jim uses the phrase "bring home the bacon," and I would shut him down for sex too, which Cindy does. He's struggling for sure. He's got the pajamas on. He's using phrases like "bring home the bacon," and he wants to get it in again. And Cindy's like, fuck off. Like, I'll go to bed, buddy. You had your chance the other night. So Jim's hitting rock bottom in this episode here.
Mm-hmm. Awfully bold, though, to tuck himself in like that. This was almost the type of exchange where it's like, all right, buddy, you're sleeping on the couch tonight. Right.
Yeah, he's been doing it in the bed.
He's not like quite that far into the doghouse yet, but he's getting there.
He's still an alpha, so he's like, fuck you, it's my bed.
He turns the light off and pulls them covers up.
But I feel like I don't say arrogant, but the confident Jim that we've known to this point is like crumbling. Like the basketball playing, fast talking Jim that we've seen for a few episodes is all of a sudden falling apart here. You could tell he's flailing a bit.
Yeah, nothing like minimizing your partner's value before trying to get it in, Jim. Did you guys catch that? Like before Cindy hops in bed, though, that she said a quick line about Glenn having the softest touch, and like Jim like didn't even pick up on it. I'm like, all right, like you're kind of being oblivious. I know you got your head and attention focused on something else right now, but you got a situation on your hands. You gotta realize what's going on.
Yeah.
You got a snake in the grass.
A snake in the grass. All right, so David is in the hallway at school and he's showing off his rapping skills, but he gets booed. But he didn't know he was performing. He was just kind of like bullshitting, freestyling as Scott. And I thought it was pretty good. I don't know why they booed him. Like, I thought it was solid. But he's ramping up. He's ready for this tryout. Cindy's now getting ready for the opening, and she says she's applying toilet water instead of perfume. Like, I guess I've heard that before. Is that just like a generic perfume, or is it like just a freshening up type thing?
Isn't it just kind of a 90s colloquialism, sort of?
Toilet water, I guess.
Like, oh, it's nothing fancy. It's just, you say it, oh, it's toilet water, like disparagingly. It's just, cheap perfume, cheap cologne.
Well, here we go. Eau de toilette. Literally translates toilet water is a lightly scented cologne used as skin freshener.
There you go.
Yeah, it's basically like a very basic cologne or perfume.
Like Axe before its time?
I think even Axe is stronger than this.
Oh, wow.
Probably so. And has a worse reputation.
Yes. Axe is not making a man of anyone's son like this was.
Oh, my God.
Was that Axe? No, that was Old Spice, right?
That was Old Spice.
How can I forget? Greatest commercial ever. All right, so she's putting the toilet water on her, and Brandon's showing a little jealousy in the scene as they get ready to go, because Brenda's IQ test scoring was higher in the twin test, so he's showing some bitterness. And this is not the first time we've seen like douchey Brandon be jealous when he's not the top dog. So this is maybe becoming a trend for Brando as we go forward. Cindy's still bitter. She mentions that baby Jim is out getting her anniversary present that never showed up on their anniversary. So he's, we're a far cry away from when Jim bought the what did he buy online, the fucking tracksuit and everything. His shop has deteriorated since then.
Yep. He got in trouble for that. Yep.
And
worse.
It's spiraling because Cindy is shutting down now. Like Jim says, I can't go. I'm stuck at work. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be here all night. She's like, all right, well, see you later. Like, does not even care. Just hangs up the phone and basically like, all right, I'm not gonna miss you. We're going to the opening. Either way, we're not gonna miss it. And I'm sorry you can't go. So I thought old Jimbo's really played himself into the shine box, Marcus.
Yeah, the line I took away from there was when Jim tells her that like, he's not gonna be able to make it. He says, "You're not going to impale me." And I was like, no, homie, she's trying to get impaled. Last thing she wants is you to be there. Like this is going exactly like she knew he was going to get hung up at work. Oh. She knew he didn't want to go look at no pictures. This is going perfectly for her. She has a clean out. She invited the family, but she still gets to go see her old buddy Glenn, who's just she is playing her hand perfectly. She is innocent. She can claim innocence in all of this, but she knows exactly what she's doing here. And like, I kind of really like Cindy now. This scene really won me over.
All right, so Jim's at work, and he's got Bob the accountant with him. I loved Bob. I think he was my favorite character in this. He's so miserable, does not give a fuck. Like Jim's like kind of like giving these needy questions, And Bob's like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? All right, let's get back to these numbers. Like,
find some poetry in these numbers.
Anything. Yes, or Jim talks about want to be a poet and all this other, like, I wanted to be a poet when I was younger and this and that. And he's like, well, you want some poetry? Read the numbers. Like, does not give a shit. I love this guy, Tim.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He cracked me up, and I kind of hope that we see more of Bob, Jim's random coworker. In future episodes.
It's like Jim a Christmas Future.
Exactly.
It reminded me of the guy like Parks and Recreation when Ben goes to work for the accountant firm or whatever. It's like, It was just like that.
Yeah.
Just like super straightforward and nerdy. So anyway, Bob, one of the Bobs, is miserable, but he doesn't even hear with Jim. So Jim's stuck at the office. We go to the gallery where Don and Kelly are there. They're all impressed by Glenn as well. And then I thought Glenn made a nice move here too. This little dime piece comes up to him. He's like, "Hey, Glenn, how you doing?" And he blows her off to go take Cindy outside. So again, really kind of showing that Cindy's his number one right now and making her see that right blatantly. Like it's clear that maybe he's got some women on the side, or maybe he's a bit of a player in these situations, and you know. Clearly, this girl was into Glenn, and he blows her off. And he says, "You want to go outside for a breath of fresh smog?"
Yes.
And so they head out, and Brenda's like all over it. Like she goes to Brandon and her, like, "Mom just went outside with this guy. Where are they going? Something's up."
And it kind of establishes Glenn as a bit of a catch himself, as if this episode hasn't gone all in on Glenn, I should say. Kind of gives him the rub a little bit, like, oh man, he's a real stud. He could pick up any woman in this joint. He just goes right to Cindy. Like, I mean, radar accuracy, just grabs her. Oh, I gotta take a break. Let's step outside. Like, oh, I've been at this for hours. Also, he's still working on Brandon and Brenda, saying, oh, I'm going to shoot these two. They're going to be my latest subjects. He's not really like associated with the twin study thing, but he seems to be doing his own kind of, I don't know, some kind of artistic photo shoot with twins, where he talked about the yin and the yang or something earlier.
Right.
And it's
so,
like,
and that even speaks to even more, why do we need this twin study? Like, why couldn't this have just replaced that, right? Like,
exactly.
Glenn's doing it. Like, they could have established it earlier in the episode and just done that instead of the other study that like they're with a bunch of other twins like for a calendar or some photo shoot or whatever. It was odd that they had two twin related things going on.
It is very much so. I mean, I guess I get it. They're just trying to be consistent in that theme across two kind of separate storylines, but it just reads oddly.
Yeah, I don't. This was the weirdest one. Like, I don't think we needed the Glenn with the twin photo shoot because it doesn't really go anywhere.
No, it doesn't.
Unless you just read it as he was really trying to do whatever he could to weasel into this family and get Cindy like, oh, like he cares about the kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, so he goes out to the bridge and now he makes his big play. He's pushing his chips in and he kisses her and Cindy goes right in. Like she does not back off. So they make out on the bridge, and Glenn has, to this point, played this game pretty flawlessly. Because here's Cindy giving in. What'd you think, Marcus, of the big moment on the water here?
You said it. There's kissing, and then there's making out, and this crossed into like making out territory. I thought the scene like up to this point did like an excellent job of kind of like painting Glenn as like a genuine guy. Like he never really bragged about like how successful he was. Like he was decently modest for like, you know, how accomplished he is. You have all these people at this event here to see him and his work and everything like that. And here he is focusing on like the twins. And now it's time to like cash in all the chips on the bridge and make out point. And yeah, it's intense. Like it is. I'll say Cindy is a willing participant. Like she, at this point, she can't say like, "Oh, you kissed me," which is like what definitely. I thought was going to happen. Right. Like, no, this was a 50-50 mutual partnership.
Yeah, he makes the move, but she totally leans into it. She was down for this kiss, and I will say this kind of shocked me because I remembered the basic outline of this episode. Like I recall, like, okay, this is the one where like they do the will they won't they with Cindy and some guy, and I didn't remember them actually making out, and it's for sure a full-on make out. So when I saw this, I was like, oh wow, I totally misremembered this episode.
I had forgotten it was even someone from her past. I thought it was just like someone she met. So yeah, like rewatching it, there's definitely way more layers than I thought. So we're at the Walsh house afterward, and for the second straight episode, Kelly gets another backhanded compliment in. Of all these gorgeous women, and he picked your mom.
Yeah.
Right up there with the one from last episode with Andrea. I never knew you were so good looking, Andrea. So then Kelly starts
you take your glasses off. Yeah. It is another one of those types of scenes.
All these gorgeous women, and why he picked your mom. And Cindy's like not even that far. She's like in the house when she said it. It was kind of shitty. So Kelly's planting these seeds of doubt in Brenda's mind about marriage. She said Jim's coming home late, and all of a sudden he's never around, and kind of this is how it starts. And being divorced kid isn't that bad, and so she's kind of prepping Brenda for what she sees to be inevitable. She's lived this lifestyle and knows what's coming. In comes Jim late from work as usual. Cindy's blasted music and floating around the room, and you could definitely tell like she's on cloud nine, and Jim is walking into yet another buzzsaw. Tim, what'd you think of Cindy kind of dialing it back and blaring the music and dancing around, and Kelly's take?
Okay, this was the scene where the original music sort of enhances the experience, I will say, because what she was actually blasting was a Heart-Shaped World by Chris Isaak. And, Chris Isaak, especially in the 90s, is kind of just shorthand for I super want to fuck and I have to right this minute. And so what they're playing instead, I mean, it's nothing terrible, but it's just sort of not projecting that same mood. She just seems sort of wistful and sad more so than horny. I know the two can go hand in hand, certainly, but I think it's quite different and quite clear what she's really experiencing, what she's really thinking if you hear a Chris Isaak song there.
All right, thank you for that, because I was kind of crossed. I was like I didn't understand completely, because she's out on the balcony and she looks, I don't know, reflective, somewhat remorseful, anxious perhaps, and then Jim comes in and I watched on Paramount Plus, so like they didn't have the music that you said, And so like I see him, he's got his working pajamas on, he's got the top open, he's ready to go to work. And like you said, like Cindy's kind of like this isn't what what I wanted. So that makes a lot more sense now that you have that the correct and original music in there.
I was expecting it to be something from like the 70s, like when she was in her youth, like a throwback song, versus something more modern. But
yeah, I mean, this is Cindy, being pretty contemporary in what she's listening to here. It's like, and it's not just like, you get into this whole like, there will be the soundtrack to an episode, and it's just sort of incidental music that helps us, the viewer, and then there's what the actual characters are listening to within the episode, and that's what this was an example of. So,
right,
so that's an unfortunate loss, I guess you can say. And I don't remember the Walshes having this balcony off of their bedroom like this. This was, I mean, it's interesting, but it's it kind of. I was sort of shook by that also.
She ought to jump. Seems the only way out of this situation.
She seemed to be contemplating it.
So Jim's back in the PJs. He's got the pants and then like the nightshirt unbuttoned, so we see full hairy Jim chest. And I felt like it's like he's trying to peacock a bit, right? Because like he knows something's going on. He's coming in late. Cindy's, moving around the room with Chris Isaac playing. Like I feel like he was trying to remark his territory, but it's tough to come off as attractive and take it a stand when he looks like fucking like Ebenezer Scrooge in his pajamas. like might as well just have like the long nightgown with the cap on. Like he comes in, like it literally looks like Grandpa Joe in this fucking thing, like from like 1840 or something coming in. And he's like trying to make his point, but the two of them are just fucking done. Like it's clear, like there's big time issues at this point because they're just not hearing each other, and him looking like that did not help his cause. Like he should have kept the suit on if he was trying to make a power play here.
The only thing missing was like him holding a candlestick in the
dark. The little candle. That's what I was waiting for. Like, it's such a ridiculous. Like, have you ever had pajamas like this? Like, I've had pajama pants, I guess, or shorts, but like never. I never did like the full button-down shirt with the pajama like matching bottoms. Is that just more of a timepiece than like a something you wear now?
Looks like something out of a Daffy Duck cartoon.
Right.
It's big match gear.
All right. So Brenda and Kelly are talking about the marital issues in the hallway, and Cindy kind of is on the steps and overhears them. Talking about it, like they even say like they probably never even have sex type of thing, and Cindy's a little rattled now that she's realizing that Brenda and others are maybe picking up on what's going on here. She's been in her own little world for a while, but others are picking up the signals. So we go back to the twin study where Brenda and Brandon are getting hot now. They're not happy because they're basically fighting over Jim and Cindy. And Stratmore's trying to dig in a bit, like, all right, well, explore those feelings. And Brandon just fucking blows up, and he's like, "This is your fault with your scientific meddling," which is quite the accusation. A lot of trouble in Twin Paradise here. And Brandon's kind of continuing his run of being an angry, jealous asshole. Like he's completely projecting here because he's mad that Brenda's scoring higher on this shit, and he's just like aggravated about hearing about Jim and Cindy some more. He doesn't want to be doing this fucking study anymore with Stratmore. And it's just all like blowing up. So he storms out. I don't know, Tim, is this like continuing Brandon's little, like, I feel like he was held up as kind of the ace for a few episodes, but now he's been slip sliding a little bit with some flaws.
Yeah, it definitely continues that trend of Brandon getting very indignant with an adult over something kind of petty. In this case, I thought that his blow up was, I mean, completely out of line. Where is he coming from with it? That is quite the leap that he made from one to the other. And I get what the show is going for. It's not really about the twin study, of course. It has nothing to do with his frustrations over that. It's all about his parents and how, he's misread the situation, how it's gotten so bad, and he was just trying to brush it off, and maybe if he had said or done something earlier, it wouldn't have gotten this bad, blah, 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 blah. But this is the show needing these two, I guess, plot lines to intersect in some way, and also just to kind of be done with the twin study bullshit and move the kids more into the main plot now. So I get the utility of it, but the mechanics are pretty wonky in how they pull it off.
Yeah, like for me, an outsider coming in, like, where is this coming from? Like, he really projects onto this lady, and like, he's a good-looking kid. He's smart. He can drive. Like I've heard the other episodes where like he had a job. Like he seems pretty responsible. But then he just has this blow up out of nowhere. Like what is going on?
He's definitely got some rage issues. And they seem to stem from like some daddy issues. Like I feel like we explored that a bit, like in the basketball episode. Like I think he just feels like he needs to live up to a standard, and it puts a lot of stress on him. So he constantly cracks quickly whenever he feels like the pressure's building.
Yeah, he seems to be like a complete perfectionist or something. Like any like his sister even just like shining a little bit over him or like having a little bit of insight, like he cannot handle that at all. Yeah, he seemed way off point. This kid's like a real dick.
Yeah, it's basically his biggest flaw at this point for sure. All right, so we get more of the Cindy and Anna landscaping hour. They're talking about the big gig they got going on that we never heard of. In come Brenda and Brandon, who decide. Brandon finally kind of gets on board after that meeting and says, okay, we're going to do something. There's obviously problems. So they go to the old 80s trope of making their parents dinner to get them to, come back together. So they got them sitting in the room with the candlelight. They're trying to whip the dinner together. Jim's kind of being a dick. He's like, oh, this is going to taste like shit, basically. And Cindy's like, what the fuck? Like, they're trying. We get a pretty heavy talk, and Jim walks out. And this is like, again, Jim has not played this well at all. This is another big whiff on his point. So Cindy is not happy, and she drives over to Glen's house from there. So I thought this dinner was pretty tense, Marcus.
Yeah, dinner was tense, and even like Jim calling, I felt like was the equivalent of Matt Hasselbeck saying, "We want the ball, we're going to score."
Right.
But yeah, the dinner scene itself was pretty intense. And like to have that conversation with like your kids right on the outside, like, oof. Yeah, some questionable parenting, I guess.
Yeah, and this is the type of thing you mentioned it being more of a 80s trope, and it is for sure. You can kind of maybe picture two 17-year-olds doing this, but the way that this show has portrayed the kids, especially Brandon and Brenda, is like they're supposed to be so much wiser beyond their years. So I don't know, this whole setup, it rang a little untrue to the characters. But it's sort of also, I get that it plays into just the powerlessness that they're feeling, like they have to try to do something, and there's just nothing they can do. This is a major, major problem between their parents that really has nothing to do with them. And Jim and Cindy even acknowledge, hey, we've got huge, big issues here, and are talking about it over this dinner, but doing nothing to try to resolve it. And that almost makes it seem like this whole situation is super hopeless, especially with him leaving and then her running off to Glen. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, and like when Jim looks to, like, Jim doesn't deny anything, but he's also like kind of making sure like Cindy kind of takes responsibility for her end as well. And like when Jim kind of points back at Cindy and like her emotional and physical and like mental absence, like the look on her face is I don't know, it's almost like how dare you. We're gonna be adults and we're gonna talk. Like I don't think, if you want your husband, if you want Jim to, own up for what he's doing, I think you also have to own up to your shortcomings as well and what's been going on.
So, and even if she disagrees with what he's saying, she kind of has to let him say it, because at least that gives her some insight into where he's coming from.
Right. Maybe
she has to be willing to do that. Yeah, she has to be willing to do it, and she kind of isn't here, with both of them both of them going their separate ways.
Yeah, she drives off to Glen's grotto on the water over here, and Glen is in full desperation mode now. Like, he went from super confident, kind of took his shot. It kind of went well, but kind of not. But here she is, and he is like going all out. So he's showing her these candids that he took of her, and he's putting her over big time to try and get her back on board. He's putting the press. Glen even gets her with the make love line. He thinks he has her, and then she kind of snaps and says, like, I'm out. And she dramatically runs away and lets out this wail.
Yes.
Oh my God,
I can't do this.
Like, it's just like this ridiculous fucking noise. And Glen just looks fucking pissed. Like, he's not even like disappointed or like, he just looks angry. Like, what the fuck? I am like, this lady is becoming way too high maintenance. So that's the look on his face. Like, this shit ain't worth it. But he went all in. When you start showing the pictures and the, talking about making love and everything else, like, you're emptying the chambers here.
Yeah. And in his mind, all of this should have worked. He did everything he was supposed to do. If she was going to go for it, she would have gone for it. And it really just came down to her and Cindy's convictions. And with that wail, that was the end of it. This is where we got our most soap operatic acting of maybe the entire series up to this point. With just this interaction between them, it was very melodramatic.
Yeah, Jim really didn't learn from his mistakes from earlier, where like he kind of pressed for her to come, and the look on his face when she said like, oh yeah, like we'll all go to your event. And here, like, he kind of repeats it where like she's coming to see him, and she acknowledges like, the mental affair that's been going on, but rather than, talk through it and try to persuade her, he jumps towards like the physical aspect. And, for what he's going for, which is, trying to steal this dude's wife, you want everything. You want the complete package. So like, if she's in an emotional mood, like, you got to meet her where she's at, and, not worry about trying to get it in at, 12 o'clock or whatever time it is right now.
Yep.
Big mistake.
And once she lets the wail out, he's always just cooked. But the problem is Brandon has stalked her. So they see her running out of the grotto, and they're assuming the worst now. They see her leaving. She drives off, and they're under the assumption that something's going on. So we're back at the Walsh house, and Jim is the next morning he's reading an article, and she's like, "Oh, what are you reading? Sports, finance?" And he's like, "No," he's reading poems, and it's his old poetry, or an old article he wrote about poetry. Because as we had found out through this, which we didn't dig into earlier, but when they were in the house talking, it was revealed that Jim worked at like some magazine or something with Glen on campus, so he was a writer. And he's kind of playing it smooth. He basically is just kind of reading the article. And then in come Brandon to go to school, and they're cozying up to Jim and completely ignoring Cindy. He's like, "How you doing, big guy? Hey, Dad."
Yes, that is a direct quote.
"How you doing, big guy?" And then when they go to leave, he's like, "I'll see you later," and they just ignore Cindy. And Cindy's like, "What's up?" And they're basically like, "Fuck off!" Like, we're not talking to you. So Jim is like, he had like almost an epiphany overnight or something, because he's playing it cool. And he just says, "Cindy, I love you," and then he goes to work. Like, so he's, doing the old Costanza, like, getting this, putting the notes in Cindy's head before he leaves for work. So that's what she's thinking about while he's gone. But I think Jim really turned the tide in the scene.
Yeah, for sure. And with a little bit of time, you can tell he's come around, and he's like, well, having thought on it a little bit, I can see more where Cindy is coming from. I got to do better. We've got to work on this thing. And, despite my misgivings, if you can even call them that, about the just overly dramatic nature of what we saw earlier, this scene does wave off what could have been a huge soap opera misunderstanding, classic trope with Brandon and Brenda like spilling the beans, saying, "Oh, Mom's fucking around with this guy. Right. We caught her last night." But they don't do that, which look, we don't have a lot of time in the episode left, but it's the type of thing that maybe later in the series they would do. But this is not what the show is right now.
Yeah, I thought this was like a bit of a missed opportunity. Like you said, if they hadn't had like that twins B plot going on, I thought there could have been a great scene with like Brenda and Jim, where like maybe that's where Jim has his like light bulb moment of like, okay,
Right.
like this is affecting the family. I've talked to my daughter. I need to be a better dad. I need to show, what a husband looks like, what a partner looks like. And like that's when the light bulb goes off for him, as opposed to like just kind of out of nowhere, like Jim comes to his senses and, um, you know, tries to bridge the gap here. But yeah, that was my only takeaway really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, because it's so episodic, we're just not getting the, like you said, Tim, this is the expansion of these stories where normally, yes, maybe we would have left on a cliffhanger where they say something that they saw Cindy, and then the next episode we explore it further. But instead, we get a wrap up here before the time's up. So we don't. So Jim, who said he's going to work, actually makes a pit stop at Glen's grotto. He goes in, he's checking out his work, and kind of unloads his whole life story. Talks about his fear of risk with Glen. He says, look, I was like you. I was kind of fancy free, and then Cindy got pregnant, and I had to just lock it down. I had to go become an accountant and to get a good salary and give up the old dream. And Glenn basically says, well, you're not missing much. Like you got, someone to go home to and some great kids and this and that. So they're both kind of grass is greener type thing, right? A little bit here. And then Jim comes in hot. I was wondering if he was going to do this or not. Like, I didn't know if they were going to just go kind of chill Jim, or he just kind of like gives him the passive aggressive, like he did there. But no, he amps it up. He goes full 100 degrees and tells Glenn to respect my family, stay away from us. And Glenn basically says it's up to Cindy, right? So he's like admitting that he's making this play to Jim, like he's going for his wife, and basically kind of makes it like it's a toss up, right? I don't know if he still felt that way or not, but he tells Jim like, this is Cindy's decision, not yours, bro. And Jim's just like, stay the fuck away. And we kind of had Cindy's breakout last episode with Kelly and Jackie Taylor, and I thought this was really like the first great Jim scene to show he's the king, because he just throws down on Glenn and is like, and again, they could have just avoided it if they wanted to make kind of the Jim the non-confrontational type person, or just more level-headed. But no, he tells Glenn, I know what you're doing, you're being a prick, stay the fuck away, and just storms out. So I thought this was pretty cool, Marcus.
Yeah, again, it was like very Midwesty of Jim to like handle like the ultimate conflict here.
Right.
And he does so graciously and like with the least amount of, I think, like violence or vigor as possible. Because I was like, okay, if he's showing up, like you got to throw hands, somebody's getting knocked out, and he's got to like take down the pictures of my wife, and like something's getting set on fire, right? And like that's not exactly what happens.
Body's getting disposed of.
yeah, like this is taking a different turn. But I did like the shoulder block that Jim throws on his way out. I thought that was great. But yeah, big scene for Jim.
The shoulder block is great. Big scene for Big Jim. The way he comes in there, guns blazing, you could just as easily see it devolving into fisticuffs. Like he just beats the shit out of him and leaves. But this is where we get a sense of just what Jim is about as a person, just standing up for his convictions, using his words, but making it very clear just who he is as a human being. And that's something we really haven't seen from him in any other episode so far. So yeah, real good character work in this confrontation that they have.
All right, so coming off of that hot and heavy scene, we get some comic relief as it's now time for the open casting call for the DJ. We get Donna going first, and she fucking bombs as always. It's terrible. Still useless.
Hates Donna.
It's useless. Steve then comes in. And he's doing great, but then he realizes like there's people out there watching him, and he completely freezes up, just like stammering and stumbling, not so cool anymore. So David comes in and he's trying to pump Steve up, and then he decides in his own mind like, "Hey, I could win this. I'm gonna roast the fuck out of Steve." And he's like, "Tell everyone why Kelly dumped you," and just fucking blasts him. And then it starts rapping, and everyone like loves it. So David lands the job, and I thought this is a cool scene for him at a big moment, which ends up being like a pretty big thing for the show. Like him being the DJ is something that plays a pretty big role in the series. So this is a pretty big moment for him. And yeah, I enjoyed him roasting, realizing like trying to be nice for a minute, and then realizing quickly that Steve would bury him in this scene, and I should do the same and get the job.
Pretty ballsy there of young David Silver, just the burial Steve Sanders here when he starts to help him out, do a good deed, just waves that shit off. Not that you would know it necessarily at the time from, again, just this little C plot with 3 scenes in the episode, but turns out to be a pretty big turning point for David. As you mentioned, JT, this when you think of high school David Silver, he's heavily associated with this DJ gig, which is going to lead to many other things.
Only thing missing was David looking into the camera and saying, "Do unto others as they would do unto you, but do it first." Because he has the chance to sink in the dagger, and he delivers. It is deep in there. So, but yeah, again, the chemistry between these two is great.
Mm-hmm. No, they're great. They've been great. We haven't got enough of them lately since the early episode, first couple. But it's we'll obviously get a lot more. So it's good to have them here. And David has a new job. Miss Ryan's back. She tells Brandon and Brenda that Stratmore loved them. They make a great team. She was impressed with them. So, all along they thought they were, blowing this thing. Mm-hmm. And no, we hear instead that Stratmore was impressed. And they each kind of, smile and move on. Glenn then shows up and he's there. Cindy's basically like, "All right, Glenn, what are you doing?" And he's like, No, I'm here to give you your pictures. And then Cindy pretty much finally puts an end to the nonsense. Glenn says his conscience shook him out of it, which I thought was still pretty cocky. Like, he doesn't give Jim any credit. He takes it on himself. He tries to make himself look good here and basically says, "I realized I was being wrong. So I woke up and I'm going to stop." When obviously, as we know, in reality, the truth is that Jim, shook him down.
Made him fear for his life.
And Glenn says he's heading to Canada. He's headed off to the Great White North, and I just, again, he kind of sucks overall.
Yes.
One thing was interesting though, his car looked just like Dylan's, and like I was wondering if there was gonna be some angle where like he sells his car to Dylan before going to Canada.
Oh God,
it looked just like it, the one that Dylan will, his infamous car that we'll get to know and love. But
yeah, I'm not a car guy, so I often miss details like that, but yeah, you're right. It's very. I wonder if they. I don't know. I wonder if they reuse it or something.
Probably reuse the prop. So, what'd you think of Glenn going to Canada, Tim? Decent out. You think he's really going to Canada, or do you think he's just telling us?
I mean, it's awfully abrupt. So I kind of doubt it. LA is a big city, even though these shows act like it's the smallest place in the world. So it's sort of like, what are the odds that he's really going to run into Cindy again when he's not actively pursuing her? So, yeah, it comes off as a big bunch of bullshit. I sort of wonder if the show thinks it's presenting him in a noble light, the way he kind of takes his exit here. Whereas to you and I, it just reads as, well, Jim put the fear of God into him, and now he's...
Yeah, I think the show was trying to portray it like he was just like kind of, he's admitting he came to his senses after Jim talked to him, right?
Right.
I think it's what maybe we're supposed to think, but it comes off as him just like it was all his idea. That's how this guy plays it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Marcus, of Glenn's final farewell?
Yeah, he comes back with his tail tucked in between his legs. And then, yeah, like you said, like him going up to Canada seems like a cop out. But like he is so successful, it seems. So maybe he did have like several offers on the table to like go where he wants to go, or maybe his work is done. I thought this was interesting. Like, I don't know if this was on purpose, but like what I took away from this was like, I guess, in these situations, maybe the show is trying to make it clear for maybe kids who have been in the situation that like, if your parents had the situation happen, but maybe your mom or your dad ended up with, the outside person coming in and they split, like, to not heal up, the third person coming into the situation, and showing that, like, hey, maybe one of your parents and this other person, had their midlife crisis, cross paths at the same time. And so I was like, maybe that's what the show is trying to communicate, that, yeah, he was trying to do a bad thing, but it doesn't make him a bad person necessarily.
All right, so Brenda and Brandon come driving back, and they catch Glenn at the house. And Brandon says, "Oh, Mom's having a nooner." And Brenda's like, "What the fuck is a nooner?" And it turns out Glenn basically, says, "You're great kids," and blah blah blah. I'm out of here, and pieces out. So they seem relieved that there's no nooner going on.
It ain't food.
It ain't food, Brenda.
I guess he wasn't sharp enough to use afternoon delight quite yet at that point.
Guess not.
So that's that. He's out. Then we come back in the house. In comes Jim. He says he left work early and he's taking Cindy on an overnight for the anniversary. And they run off, and he just says, "If as long as you love me, I'm good." And she does, and they go pack their bags. So we get a pretty happy ending to this tough episode. Which, again, I think the episode was fine. I think they needed to blow off the early struggles with Jim and Cindy and kind of reset the Walsh parent relationship. So I'm guessing we're maybe kind of be past like this piece, like the frostiness of the relationship seems to be put to bed. Big scene for Jim in here. I thought Glenn kind of sucked. Both the way they wrote him and the actor, like I thought he didn't put himself in a position to be likable in any way, or like you said, Tim, kind of where we're supposed to feel some redemption for him at all. He portrays it like an asshole, and it comes across that way the whole time. We get the comedy of Brandon and Brenda, and then some great stuff with David. So it ended up being a pretty middle of the road episode, especially coming off the amazing one that we had last week, Tim, or last time around.
Yeah, it's a tough come down for sure. And I think coming off the heels of maybe another average episode, this might compare more favorably. It's just it doesn't have a lot of hope after the Jackie Taylor tour de force. Although I will say I kind of liked it better having talked through it. It's super uneven, but I don't know. I took a weird sort of liking to this one, sort of despite my first impression. I do think it was sort of an odd choice to make Glenn as much of an antagonist, as much of a pursuer as he really was in this episode. I think the more logical play, again, in this very episodic first season, would him to just be there as more of a almost neutral party and just object of desire for Cindy without him going for it as hard as he does. Because again, it makes him kind of come off badly in a way that I don't think the show wants him to. Not that it really matters. It's just weird. Like, this is all here to serve as character development for Cindy and Jim, really. And it's like, you got to factor in this other guy and what kind of character he is. And I don't know, it kind of muddies the waters a little bit for me. But, I mean, it does lead to that great, again, confrontation between Jim and Glenn, which we really wouldn't have otherwise, I feel like. So I just sort of have mixed feelings on it altogether. Leaning positive, though.
I loved it. I thought it was dope.
Really?
Yeah. And, I haven't seen too many episodes of the show at all, but yeah, they went like all in with like, this is what we're going to be talking about. And I was expecting a little bit more as far as like seeing the other characters and like other storylines, but like you said, like the B and C plot were more like, D and E plots. Like they were not really consequential at all. But yeah, I thought it really delivered. Like, just checking in, as a very, newbie, I was pleased. I thought it was a tough issue to address, and I like that they went all in on it. And
so you hooked now? You're gonna keep watching?
I think I am hooked. I want to see what happens. If this is like resetting of the table and like the family dynamic, it would kind of explain, like, as the show goes on, if it focuses more on more on the kids and less on parents. It's like, okay, Cindy had her entanglement. She had her moment of excitement, and she realized she's not about that life. So she's just going to settle in, let Jim keep bringing home the bacon and do her own thing and mind her own business, keep her nose clean.
All right. So that'll wrap up the actual episode itself. It is now time for our awards. So let's dig into that. Our best scene. To me, I had a few in the running, but I think at the end, pretty easily, hands down, was Jim and Glenn in the grotto with Jim throwing it down.
Yep, I would back that up. It took us a while to get there, but that was the standout for me as well.
Yep, I had the same. I went back and forth a couple of times, but once that scene happened, I was like, okay, this is the scene.
All right, most important scene. I think the most important scene for the episode would be at the garden center where Glenn shows up. But I think for the show, the most important scene is David getting the DJ gig. Like, that's the one thing that really is going to carry it forward. Unless you want to say Jim and Cindy reconciling, I guess. But to me, this is like, the biggest thing that'll last years. Like the next 4 seasons, David's in this DJ booth and storylines run through there. So it's a pretty big occurrence in the lowest level plot of an early episode of season 1.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those categories you can only really talk about with the benefit of hindsight, but just knowing what this is going to lead to for David, I had the same thing.
Yeah, I have very little knowledge of David. Like, once you said he's a DJ, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so that makes sense. I would understand that. But for me, I had it the dinner scene, just because of the way that Cindy responded. I thought it made it really clear, oh, she is a very willing participant in possibly this marriage going completely off the rails. She's kind of ready for it to end.
All right, most 90s look. There was a student early on that had a pink tank top and jorts on. It was one of the first scenes in the school, so I noted that one.
That's a good one. I have Kelly as she is dressed at Glenn's photography show in what I can only describe as gold drink rings from head to toe. Those plastic drink rings you're supposed to, cut into pieces so that they don't strangle the sea turtles. She was wearing those quite fashionably.
And I had Kelly. I believe it was Kelly. Kelly was in the school with Brenda, and I only described it as Kelly is wearing the Diana Hart Smith jacket.
Yes, that was my second.
I popped so hard. I was like, okay, that's the most 90s thing.
You just needed some gloves, huh?
Well, all right. So most 90s moments, I had a couple. I had Cindy using toilet water. And the open casting call for a school radio DJ. I don't know if there's still DJs in schools, but high school having a radio DJ booth spinning tunes and talking smack all day felt very 90s to me.
I was stumped on this one until our conversation about the toilet water, and I decided, the toilet is a very 90s thing.
For me, I had the twins obsession. We talked about it. It's very reflective of the 90s, where twins are these unknown entity. They've just landed from Mars and nobody's ever seen them before or since.
That's a good one.
All right, best lesson learned: don't become an accountant. That's what I picked up from this episode.
Oh God. That. Don't let your work consume your life. Maybe. I don't know. I thought, Marcus, you raised a good point earlier. Just in stating that had this episode gone maybe in a different direction, which it can't because that would blow up the show, but many kids maybe being able to relate to this type of situation and having it play out in a way where their parents did actually split up, and making the point that doesn't necessarily mean that you did anything wrong or that either of your parents are bad people. It's just this episode really lays out and illustrates how that can happen. And I don't know, I feel like maybe it can help kids who are watching this at the time see and understand their parents as actual human beings. Just like anyone else.
And my lesson was never snitch on yourself because, oh shoot, the mom's name, Cindy. Cindy's about to tell Jim at the very end of the episode, like, hey, you should know, like, I made out with Glenn. And she, like, gets stopped in her tracks because Jim's, like, having this adrenaline high of, like, being a man and going to take her out. And, you know, he's got this alpha male moment. And, like, she almost ruined her life completely. So, yeah, my lesson is don't snitch on yourself.
That's a good one.
All right, best hookup. Probably just has to be Glenn and Cindy in this one.
Pretty hot.
Yep.
All right, I had a few best quotes. The IRS doesn't know it's our anniversary. That was Jim when he said he had to work instead of bang. I always figured you for a National G reader. That was Glenn talking to Jim about, or Cindy about being a National Geographic reader. There's just the use of National G.
National G.
You know, I'd like to shoot you too, Glenn. Not sounding like what he was intending to say. And then Kelly's all these gorgeous women, and he picked your mom. And then also you're the most modest, conceited man I know. That was Cindy to Glenn as well. So a night full of backhanded compliments here.
I feel like I was waiting forever for one to really pop me. But yeah, I got to give it to you at the very end. Brandon and Brenda in the car. Man, mom having a nooner.
I had two written down. The first one comes from Cindy, and this is after Glenn says like he can get her a discount, and she says, "Okay, dinner and dessert." I thought that was very leading to where things could be headed. And then the other one was, I believe, right before the kiss on the bridge. Glenn says, "I'm ready to settle down, but I'm not willing to settle, Cindy." And I thought that was his closer. Like that. That was such a smooth line. Flawless delivery.
Still failed.
No wonder he was so mad.
All right, let's do our trackers and then we're out of here. So the real songs we heard or would have heard tonight: "Love Generation" by Soho when DJ Mike MC announced his retirement. "Being Cool" by Javon. That's when Glenn and Cindy are driving around LA in the convertible. And as you noted earlier, Tim, "Heart Shaped World" by Chris Isaac is when Cindy's on the balcony moving around the room listening to the music. So that's that. We have our debut characters. We had Glen Evans, we had the creepy twins, we have Mrs. Stratmore, and accountant Bob Gordon with Chip's buddy.
Wow.
It was the character debut.
Yeah.
Relationships, I noted Cindy and Glenn, and David in the DJ booth. I feel like that was worth calling out as a relationship.
Yes.
And then debut places and things. I had the DJ booth because we hadn't really seen it before, even though we've heard of DJ Mike in the past. And then Glenn's Grotto. I thought
Glenn's Grotto.
I thought it was worth a call out for the big scene with Jim. So
I would agree.
Okay. All right, let's do our character rankings, and then we can hit it. So what we usually do, Marcus, as you know, is we rank the characters kind of in this episode, but also as they continue to perform overall. They get episode points, or points in reverse order, and then those points end up getting applied to the total that we'll hit to see where everything stands. So we currently have 13 main characters. We added Jackie Taylor last episode. So what we've been doing, Tim, well, at least we kind of started this last episode. If someone's not in the episode, they don't get any points.
They just get a flat 0. Yeah, so right off the bat, we know that Dylan and Andrea laid an egg this episode. Just no showed, no points.
And Nat.
And Nat, yep, I guess.
And Jackie,
since they're on our list, yeah.
Okay, so they're all zeros. So that's going to hurt a couple of these. Andrea is just making a big push too after the last episode. Yeah. Suck it, Basuccio. All right, so that's the bottom. I'm guessing we're going to go with our standard Donna next. Or would you go Kelly below her in this one? Well, Kelly at least had the dig.
Scott, maybe.
Oh, Scott. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Donna at least put herself out there.
Donna at least put herself out there, yeah.
Okay, but Scott does get 5 points because
he's here. Yeah.
The bottom's are zeros, and that's the bottom 4. So, or I guess, that's how I did it last time. Did I do that wrong? Should I have done we only go to like 9 is the most you can get, or do you like starting from the top and go to the bottom? Still gets 5 for being here.
I mean, I kind of like gets 5 for showing up.
Okay.
The only ones who should get nothing would be.
Well, they wouldn't get nothing, but I don't know if they should go 1 and we go to a max of 9 instead of 4 to 13 or whatever. Fine.
Right.
We'll do that. Whatever. All right. So Scott gets 5. I guess Donna gets 6 ahead of Kelly, or below Kelly.
Yes. Yeah. Still below Kelly.
Okay. It was close though, because she at least put herself out there and butchered the thing.
True. Yeah.
All right. So Kelly
is 7. A little. I think maybe a little bit buoyed by her last big episode, but just thinking it in isolation, like, I don't know. I thought she and Brenda had a nice little talk. Where
she did a lot more for sure.
Yeah, like Kelly is like kind of helping Brenda to see her parents and then their relationship in more realistic terms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's valuable.
So would you guys have Kelly above Steve?
Yeah, for this episode, yeah. That's just me though.
Yeah.
I think Steve she added more to it.
She did add more. Steve is always helped by anything with him and David. I think boosts Steve just because they have such good chemistry. But I mean, it's not like he makes a good showing. He gets buried and makes an ass of himself in front of the whole school. So yeah, put Kelly above Steve.
All right, so that leaves us with Jim, Cindy, Brandon, and Brenda. So I think David. I'd have and David. All right. So that's our 5. So are we going Jim 1 or Cindy 1? What's our choice here? I think they're 1, 2 for sure.
Yeah. See, Jim's kind of a sleeper because he takes a minute to break out, but when he does, he really kind of takes the episode. But Cindy,
I think Jim would have been my 1. I think he was.
Would he?
That scene was so good.
Yeah.
And he goes through the most change throughout the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But at the same time, Cindy kind of carries it. She sort of has to do the heavy lifting throughout most. I don't know. What do you think, Marcus?
In 2021 eyes, I think they're both equal, but at going back and looking at it at the time, I do think the episode's more about Jim. And it's more about him digging deep and getting that moment of manhood and having that, that alpha blood flow. Because they take the episode home on him coming in, house of fire, I'm taking you out, we're doing this, the kids are going to be fine. He's got everything planned. So I think just the finish of the show just inches Jim above Cindy.
Okay. I can see that. Yep. So somewhat controversially, we'll say Jim is our favorite here.
Yeah, I'm with Marcus. I think things turn when he starts stepping up. So
yeah.
All right, so that leaves us Brendan. I'm going to do that for the end of time. Brandon, Brenda, and David for this middle 3 spots. 7, 10, 11, 10, and 9.
I think Brenda's next. I think she just puts in a better showing here than Brandon, who...
Would you have David above Brandon? I'm debating it.
I thought about it, but
Brandon was such a dick.
He really was.
he was a jerk.
He didn't have many productive moments.
He had a really bad showing. Me coming in the first time, not good.
He's in it more certainly, but
I think I'm going David. I think he had more going. It was a better episode for him.
And it's more important in the long run what happens with David. So I'm fine with putting him over Brandon.
So this is the second episode in a row Brandon finishes more in the middle. We'll see if it affects the overall score. So I'm going to work on that, Tim. Why don't you tell us what you got going on? Any plugs?
Yes. So on our sort of sister affiliate network that is known as the Jenny Position, curated by our good friend, former guest of this show, Jennifer Smith. For the month of October, she has revived an old favorite podcast that is known as Freak Out Drive-In, otherwise known as FODI. So each Friday throughout the month of October, she's going to be releasing a new episode of Freak Out Drive-In with a new guest. This is a watch-along show. It's a horror-themed podcast. I was actually Jenny's first guest on the revived Fody, and we watched the family classic known as Hellraiser together. Yeah, so that's I'm sure a favorite in your household as well, JT. But you were also on it, so we got you in there. Got some more friends as well of the show. So check out Freak Out Drive-In. Check out the Jenny Position. Jenny and I also releasing an episode of our monthly podcast together known as Talkin' Pop. And as you might expect, it is a Halloween special, a Halloween spooktacular. This is what we kind of wanted to do last year. We always sort of talk around doing a show like that and then never do it. Well, we had our shit together this year and we did it. It was a lot of fun. We did a very loose live watch. It was more like a movie playing in the background while we talked about other various subjects. And that movie was Arachnophobia. So anyone with a fear of spiders will be sure to tune into that. That is on the Jenny Position. And you can follow me on social media if you're so inclined. I am at Cyke68, CYKE68 on the Twitter. And I think that's going to do it for my purposes. How are you feeling, JT?
I'm doing all right. Let's hear what Marcus has going on, then we'll go through our final rankings.
Excellent.
Yeah, you can check me out right here on the North-South Connection after every major WWE pay-per-view and AEW pay-per-view as well, with my best friend and co-host, Tim, not the Toolman Taylor. For Viewer's Choice Podcast, where basically we tell you what to watch, what to skip, and give our personal thoughts about all the events that just happened. And that goes into the stratosphere to download and listen to pretty much within the next hour or two after the pay-per-view is over. Tim is right on that right away, so couldn't do it without him. And you can catch us over on the soon-to-be-named network where we do Final Wrestling Place, where we take the nouns of professional wrestling and we put them into either the good place or the bad place. Currently, we are doing the Raw guest host era, where we are doing a power rankings of the Raw guest hosts and then taking them separately and putting them in the good or bad place. And you can also catch me November 6th for Flying V Fights Back. That is going to be in Silver Spring, Maryland. I'll be putting on the trunks and doing my thing there. So if you're there, if you're in the neighborhood, come and check me out. And that will also be streaming on independentwrestling.tv probably a couple weeks after the fact.
All right, very good. And be sure to check out everything else here on the North-South Connection. We appreciate everyone who checks us out, listens. And, you know, Tim, we usually mention, we forgot to do tonight so far. But listen, if you're a big 90210 fan, you want to be on the show, just reach out to us, whether you've done a podcast before or not. We're always looking for new guests. We're booked pretty far out so far, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But there are still a couple slots left in season 1. So if you want to get in, just reach out to us on social media. I'm at JT the Pod Guy on Twitter. Message me there, or just post on whatever, you know, if you see this on Facebook, comment there, or just, you know, reach out. There's ways to find us. North-South Connection. We have our own Facebook page as well. So just let us know, and we'll be happy to add you to the mix and get you on the show. So that's that. Let's do our final rankings, and then we're out of here. Still in third. What was that?
I can't wait.
Oh, okay, me neither.
The way that our rankings got restacked after our last episode, I don't know what to expect here.
Okay, it's madness. Nat still in the basement with 11. Then Jackie Taylor with 13 points. Donna Martin with 18 points. So she's making a little climb finally. Scott Scanlon at 25. Andrea Zuckerman with 40 points. Kelly Taylor just above her with 50. It feels like Kelly would be higher, but I think she just started so low. Yeah. So she's just starting to make her move. David Silver at 53 points. Jim Walsh checked in with 55 after his big number 1 performance tonight. Steve Sanders, that starts our top 5. He has 56 points. Dylan McKay, still in our top 4 with 57 points, despite not being in the last 2 episodes. He's still hanging in. Cindy Walsh is now into 3rd place with 66 points. She has passed Dylan. Brenda Walsh with 77, and she is closing in on her brother Brandon Walsh at 82. So Brandon would seem to have an insurmountable lead early. Is starting to get chipped away here as we move forward. And so... Any surprises for you guys there?
Just that the older Walshes are as high as they are, honestly. I mean, I know it's season 1, but who really saw that coming. And I wonder if this will continue to be a theme of, Brandon maybe falling, Kelly ascending. You wonder when Donna's actually going to do anything. It's just still a lot of things, a lot of big things coming up here.
Yeah, so, I mean, it'll be interesting if they build enough of a lead to, like, stay up high even when they start to fade back,
Yeah.
Cindy for sure is up there, so we'll see how that holds. But, I mean, as soon as Dylan starts getting back into the mix, he's going to climb quickly. So.
Yeah, he's really just hurt by his absences. Any episode he's in, he kind of rockets to the top.
All right. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun as always. We're here every 2 to 3 weeks on the North-South Connection, so you'll either subscribe, you can leave us some feedback, you can rate us, or just keep an eye on our social media for the newest episodes when they drop. And stay tuned for more great 90210 action. A little dim sum, a little den sum. We're out. Talk to you soon.